Easter happens in April, except when it happens in March. It's technically defined, I believe, after the Council of Nicaea as being the first Sunday after the full moon after the vernal equinox, which is just overly complicated. You ever notice that the more modifying adjectives something has, the less impressive it becomes? It's like, you know, the first person to reach the North Pole is amazing. That is a triumph of human ingenuity and perseverance. But all the other North Pole records just aren't as good. So by the time you get to, you know, the first Orthodox Jewish woman to reach the North Pole in a carbon offset 8-dog sled team during phase 2 of the seasonal snowmelt, nobody cares. And by the time you got back, you'd be so ashamed that that was the record you were trying to break. Just, you'd start looking for excuses as to why you were there in the first place. And after a year, people at parties would be like, so why were you up in the North Pole? And you'd just be like, clubbing seals, just clubbing seals. But happy Easter to everybody. I brought chocolates. Normally people are wary of being in the front row because they get picked on and ridiculed, but you guys are just getting poisoned. They're actually quite nice chocolates, slightly fancier because the champagne spilled all over them. But yeah, I've never been one for the fancy chocolates. At Easter, my general practice is to find the most efficient animal-shaped fat and sugar delivery method. And yeah, no, gourmet candy and gourmet food has never been really my thing. I do try and be classy to the point of pretension in all other aspects of my life. If the bathroom just says men and not gentlemen, it's not for me. But my tastes, in purely the most literal sense of the word, are very pedestrian in a not at all literal sense of that word. My parents did definitely try to expose me to different national cuisines and, you know, different types of food, but generally that did more things to expand my vocabulary than my palate, because I just ended up learning the words for the dish most closely resembling KFC in like 8 languages. I do cook though. I enjoy cooking. I was cooking a curry the other day, just like a mom I used to make it. Which is the wrong voice, not just because curry is Indian, but because my mother was raised in Mosman by British immigrants. So it should, technically speaking, be just like mom used to make it, or to go back a generation, just like mother's nanny used to make it. And so I was using the recipe that has been passed down by my family and their domestic staff, which is the traditional and authentic method of taking meat and vegetables and adding curry powder. The thing that struck me at this point was the brand of the curry powder was Clive of India. Now, Clive of India is a legitimate historical figure. That's Lord Clive, who was one of those charming 18th century fellows who kind of had the attitude, oh, these valley natives are rather bother for the British East India Company. Nothing we can't sort out with a spot of slavery and genocide. And that's the guy they're putting on the Indian food box. And to make matters worse, I'm cooking a beef curry, which is just spitting in the face of the whole Hindu religion. I might as well have decided on Eastern European Jewish cuisine and then deep-fried, bacon-wrapped Uncle Adolph's matzo balls. I make myself sick. Mostly from overeating that curry, which was delicious. May is the only month which is an auxiliary verb. May Day is, of course, an old nautical term of distress, much like SOS. And the interesting thing is that it's derived from the French m'aider, which is help me. I like to, it's a corruption of that term, and I like to think that this was entirely deliberate. That sort of a British steamer carrying coal and crumpets and sadness across the channel sort of came upon a stricken French vessel and willfully misunderstood their cries for help. Presumably it went something like this. Mayday, mayday, like, what's that? Mayday? Is it Mayday? Like, no, I think they're asking for help, Captain. Well, perhaps, then they should have accepted the claim of Edward III in the 14th century to their lands, pursuant to his claims in the Franco-Spanish region of Navarre and his direct descent from Philip II. Mayday! Mayday! I don't think that's what they're talking about, Captain. As perhaps we should help them. No, they're just being dramatic in that continental way which we find so charming and in no way resent as a liberated contrast to our culture of emotional oppression. Definitely not repressing that resentment either. Mayday, mayday, mayday! They're like, shouldn't we do something, Captain? All right, lad. String together all the lines we've been using to stave off the scurvy. Festoon yourself with these citrus garlands, ribbon the mainsail and frolic and sing around it gaily as we go a-carolling for the Mayday. I don't think it's Mayday, we left unattended. It's very hard to keep track of time at sea, lad. Sure, you'll learn that sort of thing. Anyway, I'm not going to let a bunch of drowning Frenchmen interrupt my celebration of the vestigial pagan fertility. May is also when we celebrate Mother's Day, and writing that down, I had a lot of trouble deciding where to put the apostrophe. Is it a celebration of mothers generally, or just of one's own mother? So I guess what I'm saying is, we all have difficult things to deal with, so maybe you're not so special, mothers. I would like to talk about a problem we have in our society, and that problem is with feminists. Not because there's something wrong with feminism, but just because so many of them haven't realized that they're feminists. You get people like successful women who want the vote and access to contraception and to work in a workplace where they're treated fairly and not sexually harassed, claiming not to be feminists, which is just not the case. I mean, if this statement, I'm not a feminist, but I believe in equality of the sexes, is about as convincing as, I'm not a racist, but I believe those people should be somewhere that isn't here because they're inferior to us on the basis of race. And I don't buy the argument that as a woman someone can decide whether or not she's a feminist irrespective of her beliefs on feminist issues. That's not how categories work. In the 18th century, when Carl Linnaeus was developing a taxonomy of living creatures, he didn't say, hey, sloths and bats, you guys feeling mammally? You want to be mammals? Is that thing sounds right for you? No, he categorized them according to their characteristics. And if that breaks down, then we can just have anybody denying their own categorizations. We have hipsters saying, I'm not a hipster, I'm a post-indie retro mixed media artist, or me claiming not to have a drinking problem. So if there is anyone, any ladies in the audience today who are legitimately not feminists, you just have your chaperone escort you home right now, and we can move on to the next part of the show. June. There is absolutely nothing funny or interesting to happen in or about June. So instead, I'm simply going to repeat the name of the month 6 times, impersonating in order each of the actors to have portrayed James Bond in the official film series. June. 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 There is less variation than I would hope for in the expression of the 3 phonemes that make up the word June. I say three phonemes. One is an affricate, so could be four. Phoneticians. That's my controversial material out of the way. But yeah, I definitely should have saved my Sean Connery impression for October.